There are 127,000 houses in this world. But how this is possible? Let's find out. With the current Godot node system, this is absolutely not possible to do. Even if I want to do such a thing, you need to create a lot of packed scene and load and unload them. But even that is not clean as this. You can see here, I can see even the farthest house here. Also, I only use 220 megabyte of the RAM memory. So before I explain what I did here, let us talk about what problem we want to solve and why it is not possible to make this thing with the current Godot system. So usually to add any mesh in Godot, you are using the node system for that. But what is a node? Let me show you the Godot C++ source code for node. And by the way, if you don't understand C++, don't worry about it. I just want to explain some general stuff. You can see here for the node class, we store a bunch of information. Let me show them to you. For example, we store the scene file path, the parent of the node, the owner of the node, the children of the node, and also the name of the node. And this list continues. Also, node itself inherits from object class, which has a bunch of other stuff like signal and so on. All of this data is stored on RAM memory, and now imagine if you have a bunch of nodes, how much memory is going to take. Let me show you this with a simple Godot project. Here in a loop, I have created 1 million nodes, and I add them as the child of the root scene. Now let's run this project and see how much memory will take. So it's take around 1.2 gigabyte of the memory, which for only the simplest form of the node is a lot. This memory usage will increase for other type of the node. For example, for node 3D, we have also the data corresponding to the global transform, local transform, Euler rotation, and a bunch of other stuff. You can see here, if I change the node type to node 3D and I create 1 million of them, it will take 1.47 gigabyte of the memory. And this memory usage will increase by other node type. But let's think about this. For showing one mesh in our world, what we need is this. The mesh itself, the global transform corresponding to that mesh, which shows the position, rotation, and the scale of that mesh, and some mesh setting like shadow setting and the GI mode. Everything else is a waste of memory. Of course, this way we cannot interact with the object we are creating, but if you take in account most of the objects in game are static objects and not interactable, this can solve a lot of problems. So my plan is to create a system with a minimal RAM memory usage so you are able to create cities or villages in your map. And you should not be worried about the RAM memory or loading and unloading the data. Well, this was the first problem, and let's see what is my solution for this. By the way, we have redesigned a bunch of stuff in Godot, and we created a workflow which I will show you. Here I have a set of assets for creating a house. The way I design my assets is like this. The door on the left hand side is the door with the highest number of the vertices, or basically this door has the LOD of the 0. And the door on the right hand side has less vertices and its LOD is 1, and so on. So in Blender, the only thing that I need to do is to name my asset with this naming convention. Door LOD underscore 0, door LOD underscore 1, and so on. I will show you on the Godot side, we made another mesh importer which merge all of this LOD to one object and does everything automatically. Okay, you can see I have other asset too, and I use the same naming convention. By the way, Ross created a Blender plugin for us, which also does everything automatically on the Blender side. So now let's go on the Godot side. Here in the Godot, you need to open the Asset Manager panel, which we added to the plugin, and drag the GLTF file, which you have exported from Blender. So I drag this here. If you go to the collections, you can see all objects with different LOD have merged to one object. Okay, then you need to assign the material that the object should have, and then we are good to go. In the bottom, you can see all of my assets appear in Asset Manager panel. This Asset Manager is not completed yet, but it will allow you to tag the assets, search for them, group them together, and so on. Okay, now let's see where our meshes get saved. All the meshes are stored inside masset meshes folder. By the way, this is not the Godot mesh type. We had to create our own mesh type for this. We have some technical reasons for that. Another thing about the meshes is that all of them get saved with a number, which this number will be ID of the mesh. We did this because we can reference each mesh only with this ID, which is much more efficient. By the way, you don't need to come inside this folder. You will add meshes with Asset Manager. As an example, I can add this door by only clicking on that. Now I have created with this modular asset this house. You can see that to create only a house, I need a bunch of nodes to add. But as I explained, we need some minimal information about these nodes. And our plugin will allow you to bake the minimal data for this house to a custom resource which we have created. Click on the root node and then click on the bake. This will bake all the data needed to create this house inside a resource which is called HLod. You can see house a.res is the resource that we created from this scene. Now in the real game scene, you need to add a node which is called mhlod scene and then set the HLod property of this to the resource that we baked. There we go. You can see my entire house is shown here only with one node. And that is really great. This HLod resource only contained a minimal information that we need to show our house. Now let's see what is the second problem. Even if we bake all of these nodes for our houses, we still need to create an instance for each mesh in the rendering server side. So each piece of this mesh should be processed by Godot rendering server. So what is that process? Well, one of the most important process is the camera culling system. Basically, if this is a camera, we want to render only the things that the camera can see. You can see here the white object are going to render and the red object is not going to be rendered. So the process of the deciding which mesh should be rendered and which mesh should not be rendered is done by a class which is called rendering scene call in Godot. This class does all the calculation on the CPU side and basically decide what mesh instance should be rendered and what should not be rendered. So here if I add a lot of these houses in my scene, it is true that we removed a bunch of nodes in the scene tree, but the Godot rendering server should handle a lot of mesh instances. Well, what is the solution for this? Unity and Unreal solve this problem by a method which is called HLod. Imagine your player is in some village in some part of your open world map. As your player is inside this village, all the meshes part for these houses have their highest number of the vertices or triangles. So basically you want that all of the mesh instances get processed by the rendering server. So if you do not look at them, they will be ignored for the rendering. Now, if I get really far from that village, I don't want that each mesh instance inside that village get processed again. Basically what I can do now is to merge all of the meshes of the village and then make it as locally as possible, and even if some small houses are not visible from the far, I can remove them. Let's see how we can do this. This is the same house which I baked all this information into a single resource. Now let's do something else. If I click on the root node, I have a button for the join mesh setting. Well, if I click on that, you can see here I can join all the meshes for the houses to a single mesh. You can also exclude some nodes to be joined. And in the top section, you should select in which LOD level your house meshes should be ignored and only this join mesh should be shown. Now just click on the join mesh and then every mesh here get joined into one mesh. And it will be exported as a GLB file. This is the GLB file for the join mesh, and just for now, don't worry about the material. Now I open this GLB file with the Blender and I just make this really low poly as possible. Now here you need to re-import this join mesh. So to do this, I just click on the join mesh setting and this time I just click on re-import. The things that happen right now is that if I get far away enough to reach the LOD tree, the entire house become only one single mesh, and that is done automatically. By the way, you may not want to create a join mesh for a single house because each different mesh occupies some GPU memory, and maybe it is better to merge multiple houses together. I did this only as an example. Now I made another house with the same method. So let's put these two houses together and make a road. So here you can see I just made a bunch of HLODC nodes and I add house A and house B to this road. The things that I can do now is to bake all of these houses into only one other HLOD resource, and also I'm going to add a join mesh for this road. This is the join mesh for the road, and as you can see, it is just some boxes. We will see these meshes from really far away, so it is okay. Also, you can see I just removed some walls between the houses, which you cannot see from far. Now I just stopped here to create the join mesh, but you can continue. You can create for the entire town or village a join mesh, which is really low poly. You can see here I added a bunch of these roads and I baked another resource. I repeat this process, and basically in this scene there are 127,000 houses. By the way, at the time of the recording of this video, we had not published this yet. This took a lot of time from us to reach this point, but still it is not complete. We plan to add other stuff in a HLod resource, like the ability to add the collisions, lights, sounds, and more. If you have any suggestion, leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching. Until the next video, have a good time.